What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Protect and Serve with Michael Fanone and myself, Maya May. Mike, I'm ready for the year to be over. I'm not going to fucking lie. Sorry to swear right off the bat, but after Trump's insane speech last night, I've run out of them to give.
Yeah, I'm going to join you in having run out of fucks to give. I know it's early. We're at a new time, 2 p.m., but it's the Trump administration, so fuck it. I'm done with. I'm not. The year just doesn't even matter. I think I'm just ready for the administration to be gone.
Well, That's exactly it. And we're just a preview for everybody tonight. We are going to do a deep dive into Bovino because he is back as Trump's psychotic bulldog. But before we go into that, we have a host of other things that Mike and I definitely need to chit chat about. And yeah, I am ready for this administration. And I'm sure a lot of you are ready for this administration to be over. And the idea that we have to endure another few years of this, where's the stamina going to come from, Mike? What energy drinks are you doing? What are your tips and tricks? Because it's the holiday season and I'm not feeling festive. I'm feeling feisty.
Yeah, I mean, I have always, over the past like 5 years that I've been actively involved in holding this administration to account. Like I just fall back on my experiences as a law enforcement officer and an investigator, and I always got my man, so to speak.
Okay.
And so, I'm applying all of that experience to this experience. Though this is significantly more important.
Is this like slow, very, very, very slow and steady will eventually like win this race? Because it feels like they're so slippery, all of them. And I was one of the people that was like, yes, we're finally going to hold Trump to account. Like I really thought that, everything that Jack Smith was doing, like I did not expect us to have to endure what we're all enduring right now. And so is it just super slow and steady? And then the eventual collapse is going to be huge because it will end in Nuremberg style trials. Is that what we're hoping for?
Yeah. I mean, we're living in the reality of, Merrick Garland's Department of Justice failed to hold Donald Trump accountable, not because the evidence wasn't there. I mean, Jack Smith went into Senate hearing, was it just yesterday, and testified under oath that, as a result of his investigation, they established proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Donald Trump engaged in an illegal scheme and that his intent was to overturn the 2020 election in his favor. That is a crime. That is a huge crime. And so, unfortunately, because that investigation was started so late in the game by, at the fault of Merrick Garland, Trump's legal team was able to run out the clock. And so the American people never got the benefit of seeing that trial play out, seeing the evidence that had been amassed by the DOJ. And now we have a DOJ and an FBI. And quite frankly, most law enforcement agencies in this country that have either capitulated to the administration or have been completely corrupted and corroded from the inside out by the administration. And, we don't have these independent institutions to hold Trump to account. So it really comes down to Trump's actions having such a negative impact on the American people that the American people do what they have been doing recently in elections and turning out en masse to vote Republicans out of office.
Right. And that's the good sign, right? Like it feels like people are finally catching up to the fact that, oh shit, elections do in fact have consequences. And so that takes me to Trump's speech last night, because he seems to think that the consequences of his election is that America is doing fabulously, so fabulous that he's rolling out $1,776 to military members. And my thought is it's so they won't coup him. They're like, please just give
their. No, I mean, like, listen, we all scoff at it because $1,776 really ain't that much, especially in Trump's economy where, everything is more expensive. But a lot, as somebody who has experience in traveling the country and talking to people, like it really resonated when Donald Trump signed all of those COVID checks for $2,000. There were a lot of Americans that $2,000, they thought it was directly coming from Donald Trump himself, and that it goes a long way.
Well, that's because he puts his name on everything. So now we have Trump RX. There's going to be the Trump accounts for child accounts, bank accounts. The man knows how to brand, and unfortunately, low information voters, people who are maybe not paying attention as much as they need to be paying attention, see his name and go, oh, yes, my president is working for me, even though everything is exponentially more expensive, despite the fact that he just told us all last night. Like, I think that's the thing to me. That's why I am out of fucks to give, is because if we're all being gaslit to the point that we can see the numbers, even Fox News is openly talking about the numbers, and then he can just turn around and address the nation with complete and total lies. And we're all just like, oh, okay, that's how we live now. Is this how we live now? Because again, I can't imagine many more years of this.
I think we've always lived that way, Maya. I think that we just never had a president that was so open to lying to the American people to benefit himself, to take advantage of every legal loophole that he can possibly find, and then when he can't, just ignore the court rulings. Again, this is the most corrupt and illegal administration that we've ever seen in the 249 plus years that this country has existed.
Which makes me go, why are we following any rules? It's tax time. Tax time's coming up. You don't have to, you can't file for free anymore because they took that tool away. Right. And because they had a deal with the folks behind TurboTax, they're like, well, screw it. Let's not try to save the money of the American people at a time when they desperately need it. And so why are we following any rules at all?
I mean, that's a good question. And I'm not going to sit here and advise people to not pay their taxes, though I think about it every single year myself. Regardless of who's the president of the United States. But I digress. I like the ideas coming from some of these governors who have said, well, if we're not going to benefit from, the federal government services because we're Democrats or we are, opposed to, some of the policies of this administration, we're going to withhold our state income taxes to the and spend the money on ourselves. And I think that that's something that I certainly would support, withholding state money from the federal government. Hell yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the federal government has no problem interfering in everyone's business right now. And I think what people fail to remember at times like this is that the services that we are asking for as a country were paid for by our taxes. We pay taxes. Right. And so if they're not going to serve us with those, then why should people continue to pay them? And again, this would obviously hurt the red states more if blue states decided to withhold payments. And so what started as sort of a kind of fringe idea years ago is now this kind of I guess it would be sedition, like tax sedition, if you will. Something that seemed like a radical strategy is starting to feel like perhaps one of the only strategies left.
Yeah, I mean, the old adage from my days in narcotics was you got to hit them where it hurts, and where it hurts is in their bank account. And if you start, hitting the federal government where it hurts in their bank accounts, and like you said, California, New York, blue states, these are the breadwinners for the vast majority of the American people. If they start withholding money, it's going to have an immediate impact on how the federal government operates.
Yeah, and I think, Pritzker and Newsom both, definitely have the cojones to do it and pull it off. I don't think any of them are fearful of any sort of retribution from, the Trump camp. So, yeah, I would definitely love to see that. But maybe people, as we said, people are starting to wise up. I think one of the things that we all witnessed this week in the tragedy of what happened to Rob Reiner. And I don't know if you remember this, Mike, before last week's show, we were quoting one of his movies. Do you remember?
No.
We were like, "You want the truth?"
Oh yeah, that's right. A Few Good Men.
And yeah, and there's his movies are so diverse. Like I didn't realize he did Misery. I didn't realize he did Stand by Me. Like he was my Princess Bride guy. He was my Spinal Tap guy. And those are the movies that I'm like constantly quoting. And so it was only after looking at in retrospect, I was like, oh my God, he's been involved with so many movies that I love, and he's a national treasure. And it's interesting to me what people seem to get enraged about, because a lot of MAGA seems to stand by him on the Epstein files, but a lot of people who did that were speaking out against his reaction to. And for anybody who hasn't seen, I'm assuming everybody's seen it. But if you haven't, he put out this abhorrent Truth Social post politicizing Rob Reiner's murder by his son. It's just unnecessary, disgusting, and so far beyond like, oh, I could shoot somebody in the middle of Fifth Avenue and wouldn't lose a single voter. If you talk shit about a national treasure who's been tragically murdered, I think you are actually starting to lose people, lose a plot. What was your reaction to it when you saw it?
I mean, I wasn't surprised. Donald Trump is a sick individual and he's mentally ill. And his mental illness is, his narcissism, which I think sometimes, people think like, oh, he's just a self-centered narcissist, but don't recognize like that is a mental illness. And that, in its most extreme forms, you get a person like Donald Trump who has no ability to empathize or express compassion. And I think the American people are starting to see that. And listen, do I think that it may have shocked the conscience of a lot of MAGA supporters? Probably not. This is, something that's right in the truest vein of MAGA, which is, this just really depraved, violent rhetoric that Donald Trump has become famous for. But what I do see is, in some of his other remarks recently around affordability and the idea that affordability is not a real thing. And the comments that he doubled down on recently about you don't need 10 dolls, you can have one or two dolls. Like people are starting to see these crazy remarks that he makes about somebody who was just the victim of an abhorrent violent crime and was murdered, and Donald Trump lashes out at him because he sees him as a political opponent that criticized him. They're starting to draw these parallels now that like, hey, when he talks about somebody like that just died, and he also talks about affordability, which I'm struggling to get by, and this guy clearly doesn't give a shit. Like he doesn't care. And so I think that that's starting to wake up a lot of folks that this is a guy who's incapable of having compassion.
Well, yeah, and not only that, I feel like the narrative online, ever since it became exposed that a lot of the bigger accounts that were MAGA accounts were based overseas and were clearly fake accounts, I think people are starting to turn their attention to the fact that a lot of the online conversation is being driven by bots. And so, and that means just like the average American, people who are maybe not super engaged, are starting to question a lot of the comments that they see under posts. And it's because anybody right now who tries to say that they are doing well in this economy is lying. And if he truly had this evidence, because on one hand, everything's going great, or it's the golden age of America, but on the other hand, get two dolls. And so you can't, the both things can't be true. He's like, oh, this is a terrible economy that Biden created. And don't worry, I'm going to fix things coming into the future. But everything's affordable right now. Actually, everything's great. And so this is what happens with malignant narcissists. Eventually, their lies fold in on themselves. And so that's what we're seeing now. And so anybody who's had to deal with a narcissist in their life recognizes that. And so I think there's a lot more language around narcissism, so people understand it a little bit more. And so I think maybe reality is actually becoming reality again in a way. And so when people go to pull out their credit cards to have to pay for groceries and put things on 4 and 5 Klarna payments, because that's what the numbers say, and credit card debt sky high. People looking up, trying to figure out how to, their mortgages, pay their mortgages. And so the reality is everyone's struggling. He's trying to pretend as not, which means MAGA's in trouble. And when a criminal is in trouble, Mike, what do criminals do?
Oh, they normally they double down on their behavior in a way to try to escape apprehension. They commit more criminal acts to avoid being held accountable, and I think that's what we're experiencing right now. And it, one of the things that I think I find most troubling is his willingness to use these agencies, whether it's, since this show is about, policing and police misconduct and law enforcement in America, he's using these law enforcement agencies like ICE, like CBP, to go out and commit these violent crimes. That's what they are. They're crimes against the American people, as a distraction from the fact that he's incapable of governing or uninterested in governing. And so, yeah, I mean, you're seeing real time a president doubling down on his efforts to distract the American people from his, shortcomings as a president by using violence and committing criminal acts.
Yeah. And you need people to carry out those acts. People who are not just incompetent, but cruel, a kind of in Bovino, as we've seen it. Like when I look at Bovino, I ask myself, like, how does this man still have a job? Like in a normal world, this man would not still be employed. And so
He'd be in jail. Let's be clear about that. He'd be in prison. Yeah. The reason that Bovino still has a job is because he's doing exactly what this administration wants him to do. He's doing exactly what Donald Trump wants him to do. He's doing exactly what Stephen Miller wants him to do. And in turn, he's doing exactly what Kristi Noem wants him to do, which is to go out to draw tremendous amount of attention to himself, to act in a way that is excessively violent, it violates people's constitutional rights, and then the American people see him doing this and getting away with it. And it's a scare tactic and a, intimidation tactic.
Yeah, exactly that. And we have a clip. I don't know if anybody's seen it, from him being back in Chicago. And I want to roll it so we can talk about it, because to me, it's an indication of, it's literally a perfect example of the kind of person this guy is.
Fucking losers, and that's why your Christmas is gonna be a piece of shit, because you're a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit. You're a fucking loser, you asshole.
Well, that is not something you expect to see from somebody who's been empowered with the ability to arrest, detain, and deport people. Rolling out of a store, and he thinks that doing rock, paper, scissors for I don't know what, I'm not quite sure what they were deciding, but have you ever seen somebody do rock, paper, scissors and actually say rock, paper, scissors out loud before? Who does that?
I mean, somebody who clearly is, wants the attention. This is someone who loves the camera, like many of Trump's, closest advisors and worker bees. He's someone who thrives on the attention. He's the only one most times that's not wearing a mask when he's out and about with his stormtroopers. He revels in the attention, and I think a lot of it is by design.
Mhm.
But he's also, he's a very, we were talking earlier offline, and when he first kind of came on the scene and started to draw this attention, I laughed at him. I thought he was a clown, and he is a clown, but he's sick. This is an incredibly sick individual who clearly derives pleasure from causing a great deal of pain, suffering, and fear, not just in the migrant community, but with anyone who isn't an ICE or a CBP agent. He revels in clashing with elected members of the government, local government officials who are there to try to hold him accountable. He even clashes with other police departments if he doesn't feel that they're going along with the program. So he's a sick man. He should be in prison. I hope that one day he is held accountable for his actions. I think that we've talked about it many times, Maya. If the American people are ever to regain or even begin to regain trust in American law enforcement, it's going to have to start with people like Bovino spending the rest of their lives in prison for the crimes they've committed.
No, absolutely. And every villain has a origin story, because I watch behavior like that and I'm like, what must this guy been like in junior high, in elementary school? Is this the guy who was like pulling legs off of spiders? Uh he just
Microwaving cats. Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, and this kind of behavior, this kind of psychosis trickles down into the people that work for him, because they look at him and they go, okay, if this is who I need to be to get to this level of power, then I need to act like this. And it makes me go, we're supposed to be the host of the Olympics, of the World Cup. Could you imagine right now looking at another country and seeing what ICE is doing here, doing that in another country? Like if in Germany they were going around rounding up people, often accidentally citizens, veterans, going around Paris and just snatching people up off the street. And these are the same people who are at the border when you arrive. Does that feel welcoming to you?
No, I mean, it goes into Donald Trump's selective isolationist, standpoint. And I say selective because, I mean, he just spoke recently that we do need some immigrants to come into this country, but they have to be, highly intelligent immigrants, because we don't have highly intelligent Americans to do certain jobs. And so we've got to pick from outside the U.S. to fill those jobs for intelligent people. We just have morons here in America, and that can do menial tasks. And so that's, essentially what Donald Trump's immigration policy is.
Well, and when you look at the people he's elevated to leadership, it's clear what he thinks. And so I mean, Bovina, that's the best you could do for this role. And so to just go back and talk about his origin story, have you
Yep.
heard this yet? He apparently watched the movie The Border with Jack Nicholson, and he was upset that the Border Patrol agents were the bad guys, and that's how he decided he was going to be a Border Patrol agent.
Yeah, that tracks. I mean, listen, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that law enforcement draws always the best and the brightest and the most well-intentioned. There were a lot of cops that I worked with that were bullied as kids. The stereotypical. I mean, listen, in a lot of cases, stereotypes exist for a reason, and this certainly was one of them. I saw a lot of kids that didn't have any authority in their childhoods. And so this was an opportunity to put on a badge and demand respect and authority over other Americans. It's the bully complex.
Oh, completely. Like what you see in the rock, paper, scissors is somebody who is not truly strong, somebody who just wants to demonstrate strength. Real strength is powerfully quiet. Real strength doesn't need bravado. I mean, everybody who's watching, and yes, we see your comments, everybody who's watching knows people in their lives who are all bluster, who are all this, and it's because they feel so empty inside. And so there's no real happiness, because actual happy people, joyful people, don't spend their time trolling. They don't spend their time seeking out a role that is supposed to be, yes, about protecting Americans from criminals, but they're going after people who are not criminals. They're going after people who are at their green card interviews. And so though people who want to destroy someone else's happiness, that's just sick. You're just a sick fuck. And so this is a man who apparently his father in a drunk driving accident killed a woman.
Yep.
So that was his role model, apparently.
Yeah, no, I mean, you can imagine somebody that, speculating here, but if you get drunk enough to get involved in an accident that takes somebody else's lives, I mean, it probably wasn't the first time that Bovino's father got drunk. And so, obviously troubled childhood, growing up in most likely these tumultuous circumstances. And he's now expressing that, but he's got a gun and a badge.
Right. And it almost makes you feel sorry for him, except for he's a grown man who could have gotten therapy instead of taking out his anger issues on other people. And so, and this isn't just right now in this operation. This is a man who's had issues throughout his career. So he joined the Border Patrol in '96, eventually getting to the command of the El Centro sector in California. But by 2023, he actually was relieved of his command. And for anybody who his social media is insane. Like he thinks he's like some sort of like SoundCloud rapper in his social media. And so he had a M4 rifle profile pic. So because imagine having so little emotional intelligence that you don't know that to do your job well and to keep your job, you shouldn't be having a social media account that looks like a teenager runs it.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, like somebody who spent 2 decades in that profession and knew a lot of Bovinos in the course of my career, though none so open with their, willingness to commit crimes. Yeah, I mean, the old adage of like, if you have to tell people how tough you are and show them through constant social media, personal reaffirmations, you're probably a pussy. And I think, Bovino is just the perfect example of, this guy who is fancies himself to be like some kind of a Rambo character, but, clearly is suffering from low self-esteem. And, remember, he literally has Napoleon complex in that he is like just barely over 5 feet tall. And so
was he ever a gymnast? Like, that's the thing. Like, he could have taken this energy and done great at the vault. Like, he could have done so many great things in the Olympics. And instead, maybe he didn't believe in himself enough, or maybe he could have been a soccer player. Like, there are so many things that he could have chosen to do that were a bit more on the positive track. But instead, when they asked him to, they were like, yeah, you got to step away. He didn't retire. So despite everybody clearly hating this man, he did not retire, which I guess you got to admire the stick-to-itiveness of this guy. Like, he's very like broy in the like, I'm gonna show them sense. And so flash forward to now, Trump wins, as he reminded us last night that he got all of the horse jockey. That's a good one. He would be a fantastic horse jockey, which to my next point, they rode horses, not him, but the agents were on horseback in MacArthur Park. I was actually in LA at the time. And so that was kind of one of the first very visible operations where people were like, who is this guy? And they stormed a park. Like, unnecessarily stormed a park. It's like one of those kind of parks that has like swan boats, and the paddle boats where people get together, kids playing soccer.
And for those who, forget, you don't even need to have had any experience in law enforcement. If you look at these quote unquote operations that this guy is leading, and you say to yourself, how does that make the public more safe? It doesn't look like it makes the public more safe. It's because it fucking doesn't make the public more safe. It's all about the optics. It's Bovino leading a parade wherever he goes, again, to like draw all this attention and make it seem as though, there's a new sheriff in town, so to speak. Meanwhile, his agents are out, harassing and arresting pregnant women, running them over with fucking cars, beating American citizens, imprisoning American citizens, and then releasing them without any type of, record that, that it ever happened. Bovino's off lying in court. He's already been found to have been, uncredible by multiple judges at this point at the federal level, which most times would completely end a cop's career. Although Bovino is not responsible for any type of evidence gathering and clearly doesn't give a shit about evidence anyways, he's just a one-man wrecking ball that goes out and destroys communities. And eventually, I would always caution everybody in the law enforcement community, the winds always change. The pendulum always swings in the other direction. And I think it's incredibly naive for Bovino or anyone else in the community to think that this administration is going to last forever, or even that another Republican would tolerate this type of enforcement against the American people. This only exists because Donald Trump is president, and that motherfucker ain't living forever. He'd be lucky to make it out of this term, considering his morbid obesity and clearly cornucopia of health issues.
Yeah, I'm trying to manifest more Big Macs for him. I was like, just call it into being. I was like, I've got little sound bowls, but things do change, Mike. You bring up a good point. Like the new mayor of Miami is already pulling them out of the 287G agreement, saying that it should have never been signed in the first place. So think about all of those officers there who maybe have gotten involved a little if further in than they would like to have been and are now facing, oh, okay, I guess this is not what we're doing. So in the inhumanity of it, the amount of videos that I've seen come across my feed, just even in the past week alone, and then hearing stories about people being at their citizenship ceremony and being pulled out of line at their citizenship ceremony. And so the Trump administration is looking for any reason to label someone, as they're revoking temporary protective status. They're looking for any reason to be able to fill up more of their detention centers and enrich more of their buddies. And so when you have these, Mike, when you have these officers like a Bovino and anybody who is learning from him, When they start to operate out of the chain of command, when they start ignoring judges' orders, what does that do to the rest of the rank and file? Like, what are they looking at now? And even the people, how does this affect recruitment and who they're recruiting?
I mean, I think you see anybody that may be opposed to the way that this agency is now conducting itself, that maybe inside the rank and file is most likely terrified to say anything. And from the several ICE agents that I know that I still talk to, they avoid those types of deployments. I mean, remember, this agency is large; its responsibilities are vast. There are other assignments that are available, and they try to avoid those assignments. And most of them are, in fact, voluntary. And from what I've heard, there's no shortage of volunteers. So they're finding enough people, specifically within CBP, Customs and Border Patrol, now that the southern border is closed, to go out and participate in these state-sponsored exercises of violence against migrants and the American people, which is just as troubling.
I was going to say, yeah. So they're attracting now. It's self-selecting. They're attracting the worst of the worst, or maybe just somebody who needs a job, is what it seems at this point. And not getting the training that they need, because again,
you don't need training to go out and beat the shit out of people, especially when there's 100 of you, 200 of you going out deploying at a time in armored vehicles with fully automatic weapons, and a boss, a supervisor who's willing to allow you to deploy chemical agents just because you have them in your possession.
I'm glad you brought up the sheer number of agents that they'll often send on an operation into a neighborhood to pick up, not even pick up landscapers in the sense that they have a warrant for those particular landscapers, but just roaming neighborhoods where people live to track them down. Why is that necessary? Why do they need a force of 200 people to do that?
Well, I think number one, I mean, listen, when I worked in specialized units, we would traditionally send not hundreds, because we didn't have access to those numbers, but we were doing targeted stops, which is a huge difference. We already had somebody in mind. We knew that we were going to arrest them. Oftentimes we had a search warrant for their vehicle or an arrest warrant for them particularly, and we would go out and we would stop them, and we would bring 8, 10 officers to do this, because that overwhelming force most often prevented the individual from feeling that by resisting our force or by using force in turn, that he or she could escape the situation. What these guys are doing is just simply trying to overwhelm these communities. And I think they're also starting to experience pushback from in the community. You're starting to see, random groups of citizens, residents, filming them, trying to get in their way, obstruct them from, again, they're not doing targeted sweeps. They're just roaming the streets intermittently, without any type of, no rhyme or reason other than just going out and making contact with Black and brown people, because, they're looking for Black and brown people to deport. So I think that has something to do with it.
Well, in the pushback now, because I can say it's a lot of my friends I see in Illinois who are out there are soccer mom types who know their rights. Like I'm going to start calling my friends Karens for good, because it's like they're taking their ability to stand up to power and know that they're more than likely going to be okay doing so. And they really are. They're organizing in these groups and getting out with their whistles and honking horns and filming, which is obviously a very important part of the process to make sure that we have the evidence that we need in the future, when hopefully these guys end up in court defending or trying to defend these actions. And so the more people get involved, the easier it becomes to defend our communities. And they are trying to overwhelm our communities. This is never about safety. I don't think anybody in these communities felt unsafe to the point that they would need 200 agents roaming through and asking
They
people
fucking do now.
Well, that's exactly it.
That's the point. I mean, it's funny. Like, I saw several weeks ago, I was in Washington, D.C. I try to avoid that place like the plague now that it's become, Trump's kingdom. But I was downtown in D.C. and I saw a group of women who had just gotten out of a yoga studio. They all had their yoga mats. And you see this, ICE, FBI, and MPD, the local police department, my old employer, entourage, and they had somebody stopped, and all of these women just pounced and took out their phones and surrounded them, and were filming, asking questions. Why are you detaining them? One of them purported to be, she said she was a defense attorney. She started reciting all types of legal things, and it was wonderful. It was great. And eventually they just, let the guy go and got back in their cars and drove off to fucking harass somebody else. But,
Yeah.
It's great to see people stop what they're doing, getting involved, and standing up for others who can't necessarily stand up for themselves in that moment, or just having their back. I mean, that's really, I think, what this comes down to is like, Americans need to start having Americans' backs to stand up against this administration.
Yeah, and we talk a lot about community because that everybody knows that a stronger community is able to produce a better democracy, and so we come together to be able to make sure that we do have the services that we need, that the roads are fixed, like the basic kitchen table issues that actually truly matter. Well, in order to do that, it means we have to be able to listen to each other, connect with each other, and so one thing that I can say, Trump might be the great unifying president in the sense that he's bringing together people who have common sense and decency and say, hey, you know what, this isn't what America is about. And I'm not going to watch you harass the people in my neighborhood. And on top of that, I'm going to go to a training and learn how to do that legally, because when you know your rights, you're able to defend them. And so much of what the Trump administration has done and is doing is outside the bounds of the law. They are breaking the law. And so as long as people are doing it within the law and defending their rights and defending their community within the law, there's nothing wrong with that. That is literally what we're supposed to do. Yeah, no, I mean, it's, as somebody who wore a badge for 2 decades, a lot of, there's this presumption that when a police officer puts his hands on you, the vast majority of the public, at least up until this administration, said, okay, well, there's got to be some justification for what this officer is doing. Now, there's always exceptions, and there's certainly communities that have been, disproportionately targeted with overly aggressive, sometimes illegal, assaultive behavior that leads them not to trust law enforcement so much. But if I was to go out and put hands on somebody in the public, it wouldn't create the level of attention that it is today. And I think that people need to be reminded that just because you're wearing a badge, just because you're a law enforcement officer, doesn't give you the right to assault people. And people have the right to defend themselves. And, you talked about all of these resources that the American people kind of depend on each other. We pay taxes to the government, and the government is supposed to, like you said, pave the roads. And we're supposed to come together as a community to ensure these different things. I think it's fine time the American people start to realize that we ourselves are going to have to take responsibility for our own community's safety, because we can't depend on law enforcement under this administration, because in reality, they're the ones that are creating the terror. They're the ones that are creating the fear. And in a lot of cases, they're the ones creating the violent crime. No, and going forward into next year, because we're almost out of time here. Going forward into next year, I want to think about the things that are actually unifying in the sense that they're the struggles that we all have, the affordability crisis or hoax, as Trump would like to call it. So we all have to pay for healthcare. We all have to make sure that our kids can get to school safely. We all have to make sure we can feed our kids. And so, grocery prices and energy prices, we want to be able to heat our homes. These are all things that we can kind of agree on that they're a little bit high. The data shows that people, I think it's like 75% of people said that things are tougher now than before. Don't quote me on that. I would have to pull up the statistics, but I was looking, I think 36 or 37% of people who have had to skip a meal in order to be able to save money right now. People are living paycheck to paycheck. And so when you watch Trump's actions and you watch people like Bovino's actions in the coming year, ask yourself, is rounding up people in a neighborhood who may or may not be a US citizen or an undocumented immigrant, they do not know, but they're just profiling them, is that bringing your energy prices down? Is that bringing your grocery prices down? You know, the amount of resources that this administration has decided to put into policing communities, in particular with surveillance tech, that is to surveil you. That is not to bring down your energy prices. That is not to bring down your grocery prices. And so watch their actions, because they never line up with their words, ever.
Yeah, and then, on top of that, are any of those efforts actually making you safer? I'm going to answer that question. No. The deployment of hundreds of National Guard troops and Customs and Border Patrol and ICE to go after the migrant community is not stopping crime. I went back, and when Donald Trump said that Washington, D.C. was crime free, listen, there's a public website. It's run by the District of Columbia's government. And they have to, by law, present the public with every crime that's reported in Washington, D.C. And during the last month in which Trump said crime was gone in Washington, D.C., there were over 1,900 reported crimes, most of those being violent crimes, robberies, burglaries, carjackings, auto theft. And so, again, it's not making you safer. It's not doing, and it's certainly not bringing your prices down. So you might want to think about supporting this president and supporting this administration.
Yeah, seek out elected officials who actually do have your interest in mind and who can think logically and sensibly about what actually brings America together, because united we stand, divided we fall, y'all. It's the simplest thing, and apparently this administration has forgotten that, because they haven't made an attempt at all to bring people together. It's just been attack after attack. And why? So they can get away with robbing everyone blind. And so unless you are a billionaire or are just living off of your assets, you are a part of the working class. So we need to stick together, y'all, and protect our communities and make sure that we are going to exist as a country beyond 2026.
Workers unite.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, Mike, it's been a pleasure as always. Everyone, thank you for joining us. It is Christmas season is upon us, and though Donald Trump may be trying to ruin everybody's Christmas by making everything so expensive that we can only afford like an arm of a doll, or that we will just have to draw pictures for Christmas presents this year, I want everybody to have a safe, and Merry Christmas with their families, and the family that doesn't drive you crazy, of course. But I don't know, maybe reach across to that MAGA aunt or uncle and build some holiday joy is what I'm saying.
Just ignore them.
Or just ignore them. That's probably the healthier.
Let them rot in their misery in their own goddamn home. you have your own joy with like-minded folks around you.
I'm a big fan of chosen family. I am. Last year I told people after Trump won, I made a video that I was like, do not feel bad if you need to distance yourself quietly from some family members. But I'm gonna refill my optimism stores. That's my New Year's resolution to myself is I'm gonna refill my optimism and positivity stores and pace myself in 2026 so that unlike this year, I'm not a ball of rage, which is basically what I am at right now. I'm a ball of rage running on empty and very ready to just chill the F out this holiday season. So that's it for me, y'all. Mike, you got any New Year's resolutions? Anything?
No, I'm saving all of my positivity and celebratory energy for when Donald Trump finally keels over from whatever ailment. And yeah.
Oh, I have the dancing and celebrating I shall do. I could be like half asleep, gone on 3 days of no sleep. And if I get that news, I will be awake for another 3 days and make sure to hydrate. So
I think it's going to be so loud that you'll be able to hear that shit in space.
Yeah. No, it's going to be like when I used to live in Argentina and La Selección would score and everyone was like, goal!
Yes.
Argentina. It's going to be like that. We're going to be like, go Trump. Okay. All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. And we will, I guess, see you not next week because next week is the holidays. Next week it's like Christmas, isn't it? Already. How did
2 weeks.
How did it happen? We'll see you soon. Good night.